Hello, welcome to Revelator Alpha, another radio podcast thing. It's a live show, don't you know? We're talking of all things bikes, all things what's been happening in the world, what's been happening where you are, and, well, what you've been up to this weekend. So a few stories to go through, but I suppose the main thing I'm going to be talking about is Harley-Davidson. They've just released their CVOs. If you didn't know, if you've been living in a cave or something, but they're living in CVOs. So they've released their CVOs. I suppose, you know, what's the reaction out there? What do people think of them? What do they think of the technology? What do they think of the price? What do they think of the company as a whole? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to be digging into that. I've got the chat open, so if you want to ask a question on any topic, just let us know. By all means, you can follow me on the social media platforms. You can go to Patreon and subscribe there as well, help support the channel, or via PayPal. You can either support direct here on the live chat as well, and you can do the old TikTok thing if that's your bag, as it were. As I say, I've got the chat open, and so hopefully you do that. Right, okay, so there we go. There's the chat. So that's open there. There's where you can sub, and this is back here. I think I'm just going to remove myself from this studio mode. There we go, because it gets a little bit confusing. Right, so what's been happening in the news? Let's get into it. Okay. In the news, well, obviously, Harley-Davidson have made their groundbreaking announcement of their CVOs. Bit of a mixed reaction, I think, out there. I think it's fair to say. But there's let's just get into some of the other stories first of all, and then we'll dig into that. Give people a bit of a chance to catch up as well, as I say. But it's this one comes directly from Motorcycle News. Just remind everybody that I do have the website revelatoralpha.com. A lot of these stories that I am publishing there directly, I am getting the news feeds and the press releases and the inside track on most of these stories as well. And so I'm putting those up on the website, on blog posts as well. So you can get lots of information there just for the blog post. But, you know, the whole point of this show is to not promote my own website, really, but it's also just to promote the stories out there and also the publications, you know, out there as well. So this comes from Motorcycle News here in the UK, and it's talking about the Ducati, the latest V4s. They're basically saying they're able to morph into parallel twins. Essentially, you've got a V4 there, and it's like it's having two V2s, as it were, side by side. So imagine for a moment that you've just splashed the cash on a cutting-edge 1158cc V4, only to find it's actually a 579cc parallel twin. That's precisely what the Ducati Multistrada and the Diaval are for much of the time, and the whole transition is totally seamless. From being some kind of swindle, it's a result of the latest iteration of Ducati's cylinder deactivation system, which cuts the spark and the fuel to the rear cylinder bank under certain circumstances, just like the Harley-Davidson does with the EITMS, right? First introduced in 2018 as a software update, the system was initially used only when the company's V4 powered bikes were at idle, but now extends to low speed, low throttle riding as well on the DFL and the Multi, and the same strategy is likely to extend to more models. Yeah, I mean, I can see what they're doing here. They're basically saying, well, when you don't need the power, we're just going to shut off the power when you don't need it, if you're just riding at slow speed and everything. So yeah, I mean, go read this story. It's quite interesting, actually. It's interesting for me how certain manufacturers are looking at things in different ways, I think, in terms of efficiency, in terms of emissions, in terms of product design, engine design, that kind of thing. But also, you know, just thinking about the future, how they can evolve and produce bikes that you're going to like, let's say, or that you'll enjoy riding. But they're all trying to find their own little space at the moment, in light of all the technology that is kind of changing, especially with electric vehicles, but also with the different types of fuels that are being worked upon, and also the green fuels as well, because there is a big movement now to have, let's say, synthetic fuel, that kind of thing. There is a big movement now to put a challenge up against the EV world, and say, well, actually, we still want our internal combustion engines, and for many people, that's all they want. They're totally turned off by the whole EV bike world. I'm not saying about the car world, but for the bike world, so it's interesting to see how the technology is going. Metal on both legs, hello, cheers. Thank you. Thanks for joining. So interesting there. So Ducati, honestly, they're doing rather well, or they did a very well in the last 2022 in terms of sales. I think they broke through 60,000 motorcycles sold in 2022. They had a lot of pre-orders, as I say, for 2023, but I don't really know how well they're selling right now. I would imagine, just like many of the motorcycle brands that are selling, the top-end bikes, the expensive bikes, there might be a slight hesitation for people to go and buy them right now, or certainly the tail end of last year. But Ducati seem to be bucking that trend. So it could be that they're just attracting the type of rider that actually is not really being affected by a lot of the global economic issues, But there we go. All right, okay, so that's Ducati from Motorcycle News, with their technology. This is an interesting story here. You may have seen this. This has actually been covered in quite a lot of press, or motorcycling press, this last week. Basically, the world record has recently been broken on a Triumph Tiger 1200 by one guy. He's ridden the furthest distance in 24 hours, which is 4,012 kilometers, right? So when I first just heard the headline, when it came up on my news feeds and all my news sources that I get through, I thought, wow, that's amazing, because I'm quite into endurance bike riding, and I've done a few things. You might have just seen a couple that I've shown on the channel. A lot of the kind of long endurance rides or challenges that I set myself, I don't put on the channel, that kind of thing. I might do in the future, I don't know, but I've got a few in mind which I've suddenly started thinking about again recently. But anyway, I thought, okay, this is an interesting thing. Right, so you've gone the furthest distance. Wow, on a road, that's amazing. How did you achieve that, and keep to legal speed limits and all that sort of stuff? And then I thought, what he must have done. This is before I even looked at the article, right? I thought, you've probably gone to someone like Germany, and you've probably gone onto the Autobahn, and you just, ping the throttle and away you go. But no, what it is, let me just, I don't know. My didgeridoo is gone. There we go. He went on to a racetrack. Imagine riding a motorbike from London to the Great Pyramid of Giza in just 24 hours, a total of 4,012 kilometers over one day and night. So, right. Spanish enduro rider Ivan Cervantes undertook to try and break one of Guinness World Records' toughest challenges. So basically, he took a Tiger 1200 GT Explorer on the 29th of April. He tried to ride further in 24 hours than anyone has done before. Now, where was it? The venue was the unique Nardo Technical Centre in Puglia, Italy. Its outer ring is a perfect circle with a flawless surface, a place more usually used for long-distance testing by manufacturers of their prototype models. Yet travelling for 24 hours on such a featureless track, aside from the obvious requirements to refuel, eat, drink, sleep, and take care of nature's call, obviously brings other challenges, as Ivan said before. So, Here's the interesting thing. I've done 24-hour riding. I've done over 36-hour riding as well. It is an absolute challenge, yeah, no doubt. But that was on the road. You know, when you're talking about things like endurance riding, like iron butt challenges and all this sort of stuff, well, the biggest challenge is, yes, on the type of bike that you're doing it. So that is a challenge in itself. So that makes a difference. But it's also what kind of road that you do it on. So let's just say you're on a motorway or, you know, a highway or whatever, and it's just free-flowing traffic. You time it just right, because a lot of this is down to timing, so you avoid traffic, right, or traffic build-up. So you can just keep a constant speed and just keep on going. And yes, like, if you're not worried about, you know, people starting criticizing you for breaking speed limits and stuff, or whatever, but that's it. The problem is then if you take it off those kinds of highways, motorways, and you try and do A roads or B roads and things like that, it becomes an incredibly difficult challenge, certainly for someone like here in the UK, but also in Europe as well, where just even 1,000 miles in 24 hours is actually a bit of a challenge. Now, the most I ever did on a 24-hour ride was 1,450 miles. So 1,450 miles. And I chose it because I chose all motorways. I just wanted to see how far I could actually go. I kicked myself because I actually ran into quite a few spots where just traffic was building up. So, and also I encountered a lot of fog and everything on the time of year that I was doing it. So I always believed that I could go further. Okay, but here obviously this guy has gone 4,012 kilometers. What's that in miles? You know, it's about over 2,000 miles, isn't it? 2,000 and change miles. But he's not done it on a road. And also, when you read down, I don't think he even did the full 24 hours. They basically, he had a whole team there. Now, I'm not saying it's not a great challenge or what he's done. I think it's fantastic. But I've got to say, I was a little disappointed when I found out it was on a purpose track, and so on and so forth. But as I say, you know, I don't want to be critical because obviously it's an amazing track. The challenge, though, the challenge on this, as they already said, is because you're constantly just going in a big circle on a featureless track. So that's one of the distances. That's one of the challenges as well. Now. And on another, basically they said for 24 hours, but I'm not sure if he actually rode for 24 hours because his team was saying, look, you've beaten the previous world record. Why don't you just beat it? And I think in his mind, he's quoted, he's basically saying, I'm paraphrasing here because I can't remember exactly what he said, but he basically said, no, I want to keep on going because I don't want somebody else as stupid as me to come and try and break this record. You know, if he'd just broken the other record, he wanted to smash it, and I think he smashed it by 1,500 kilometers or nearly 2,000 kilometers. You know, Mark, hello. Thank you for joining as well. But look, it's a great thing. But as I say, I don't think it was a full 24 hours. I think it might have been sort of 19 hours or maybe more. They reached a point of over 4,000, and I think they cut it down. I could be wrong there on the details, but I just look. It's a great achievement, no doubt, and the bike is obviously great. But I think in those circumstances, this is not a record that will stand. If somebody wanted to beat this, I think they could beat it. I honestly do. I honestly think that they could beat this. Not easily, because nothing in endurance riding is easy, but I think they could do it. I've got a feeling that they could do it. In Puglia in southern Italy, it's always good weather as well, so it's going to be quite warm. They've done it in April, so it'll be fair to mild weather over there and everything. There's a video there as well, obviously a YouTube video that goes into all of it. But look, go check it out and see what you think. I say it's only my opinion, but as I say, you know, if there was more, I would say a road challenge is much more of a challenge because of all the problems of road riding. Okay, if we're talking track riding, that's different, but road riding a massive challenge, to do this kind of thing, endurance riding, right? It depends where you are in the world as well. Certain countries are much more difficult to do this kind of thing than in other countries. Yeah. Because let's say here in UK or Europe, much more difficult to do this kind of thing because we have, unless you get onto the motorways, but especially here in the UK, it's so congested. There's too many people here, too many cars. So making this kind of challenge is actually quite a difficult one. Okay, next story here. This is a nice one here from Ducati. From more bikes, Ducati's Scrambler goes back to the future. Bologna's firm's a trendy sub-brand, Scrambler, launches new bikes for 2023 high-end Soho event. So all these new bikes that they've coming in, they've lots of retro cool stuff, but yeah, I mean there's lots of good. You could go to Ducati Scrambler site and everything, and and go through all that, but it's a nice little read here actually from more bikes. So they've done a nice little thing. Where was my invitation to this event? I'm slacking on the journalistic front here as well, I got to say. I do like Scramblers. I do like Scramblers anyway, but I like Ducati Scramblers as well. I think they're just really cool bikes. And even up in the flesh. I'm just not sure. I much prefer something like Fantic Caballero. Big fan of the Fantic Caballero, which is kind of in the same vein of that. So this kind of street scrambler, retro scrambler look, I actually really like. Okay, the next story here. Now, I don't know if you are aware, obviously Harley-Davidson in China, they've launched the X350 and the X500. Actually, I don't know how many of those bikes are being sold over there. Be interesting to find out if they've been, been taken up by the population over there. People are buying them, but I would have thought so because it's the brand name Harley-Davidson. So you would have think. But anyway, India, of course, they're releasing their own Harley-Davidson collaboration as well with Hero. Anyway, so the X440 is coming out very, very soon. And now they've just released new images. There's new images of the made in India Harley-Davidson X440. I don't know if it's going to be called Harley-Davidson X440 or whether it's going to be Hero Harley-Davidson, but I think all the labeling is just Harley-Davidson, and this is for the Indian market. I think it might be going to Pakistan, Bangladesh. I think it might be going to some other markets in the area. As yet, we've been told very little about whether it's going to Europe. Definitely not going to the United States as far as I'm aware. And they're already, a lot of the Indian press, this is from Express Drives, or sorry, financialexpress.com, Indian magazine, but there's already talk within India whether this X440 Harley-Davidson is going to go right up against and challenge the to be launched at the end of this month and first week of July, the Bajaj Triumph. Which is going to be around a 400cc bike. They got a couple of bikes. They got a Scrambler and a Roadster coming out as well. So it'd be very interesting. But say new Royal Enfield rival. Well, they're saying it's a rival to Royal Enfield. I say other magazines are all saying it's the Triumph that they're really begun. But they're all trying to beat the Royal Enfield in that 350, 400cc market. They're really trying to go after that market. Anyway, so. The X440 will be the iconic American motorcycle manufacturer's most affordable motorcycle. Okay, so this is it. I mean, it looks pretty good. The other images that I've seen of it, it looks really nice. The new images clearly show the new oil-cooled single-cylinder 440cc engine. The powertrain will compete against the segment leader, Royal Enfield's 350 motor. The latter's power figures are 20.2 bhp and 27 newton meters of torque. Harley-Davidson has not revealed the specs of the 440 powertrain, but is expected to have an output similar to the Royal Enfield. Okay, a lot of other publications have said it's in the region of about 35 newton meters of torque. That's what it's looking at. Sorry, 30 newton meters of torque. I think it was about 35 horsepower. I'm not 100% sure there. Yeah, so nice little read here as well. But there we go. Look, you got some nice little images there. It's got that kind of street scrambler look to it. It's got a big exhaust on it, hasn't it? Look at that. This kind of front number plate here you'll see on the left image. That's because it's in an Indian bike. That's brilliant. Morris, good evening. Good evening. Thank you for joining. Plumduff, any suggestions on getting a more comfortable seat? My Honda is killing my rear end. Have a look at, I'll tell you what you can do. Have a look at gel pads or gel covers. If you don't want to change your seat, that's a very cheap way of doing it. Gel covers, you can even get bead covers as well, would you believe? And they work really well. There's also like these air pocket covers, which you can put over your seat and tie underneath, and that works as well. But try those out. That might work for you. But I've got to say I quite like this. I quite like this bike. I think it's just a shame, just as with the Triumph, that they're selling of that, because KTM and BMW obviously sell a 390 400cc bikes over there in India as well, and they're produced over there as well. These bikes are going to be produced in India as well, as the Chinese ones are produced in China. But the KTM and the BMW are also sold elsewhere in Europe and everything like that. I've got a feeling that the Triumph Bajaj or the Bajaj Triumph bike, and also the Harley-Davidson bike, this X440, will have a very successful time in Europe and also in this country, purely based upon the success of Royal Enfield in Europe and also in the UK, how many units they're selling. Okay, Royal Enfield, up until a few years ago, were a bit of a non-entity, really, I suppose, for the UK market, European market. But slowly but surely, they just got out and bigger and bigger and bigger, and more market share. And they're producing, let's say, 400, 350s, 400cc, but they're coming in on a really very affordable price for Western people, £3,000, £4,000, £5,000, something like that. So if these bikes, the Triumph and especially the Harley-Davidson, can come into the UK for about £4,500, £5,000, I think there'll be a market for them. I think people will buy them. Plumduff, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. So anyway, so lots, yeah, there we go. Oh, okay, so there you go. You can see on the screen there, Harley-Davidson. It is just Harley-Davidson, the X440. It isn't, I thought they might have a little hero on there as well, but there isn't anything. Yeah, so the Harley-Davidson XR design ethos, X440 is a roadster that sports a flat, wide handlebar with a commuter-friendly riding stance. I'm not so sure that's a roadster myself, but there we go. I could be wrong. The seating position is neutral, as the foot pegs are neither pushed forward like a cruiser nor aggressively pushed back. The step-up of the X440 is very retro. The setup. Hence, it gets simple, round-shaped LED headlight. Circular indicators and mirrors with Harley-Davidson written on the DRL LED strip. The slim-shaped, squarish fuel tank now sports the entire name tag of the motorcycle Harley-Davidson X440. I'm sure I saw a very early pictures of this, and it had Hero on there as well. So maybe they've just done away with it. Previous images only showcased the X440 name. Okay, maybe that's what I was thinking. Right, so it only had X440 on it, and there was the speculation whether it was going to be Hero Harley-Davidson, right? Okay, but there we go. Based on a tubular flame, new X440 will come with single disc brakes on both wheels with dual channel ABS, upside down forks, preload adjustable twin rear shocks. Gets MRF tyres with an 18-inch front wheel, 17-inch rear. The motorcycle will come with single pod digital instrument cluster. Yeah, it's whatever priced. It's going to be priced in a competitive competitively. What they're saying actually, because they may struggle with this bike sales in India, this is because Bajaj Triumph are opening up 120 dealerships in 120 cities to really push the sales of that bike. So they're going to have a challenge on their hand. They're going to have a bit of a I think it's a really nice bike, actually. I think Harley-Davidson and Hero have done a great job. I'd be interested to see what the Triumph one really looks like, but I think it's going to be relatively similar. But I'm convinced these bikes, because they're a lot cheaper, would do well in Europe as well. So if you're listening, Harley-Davidson and Triumph, if you're listening, hey, please send them over to Europe. I don't think they'd sell well in the United States or Canada or places like that. Not for any kind of anti-American thing or anything like that. I just think possibly the road network wouldn't support these kind of smaller bikes. The urban riding, yes. City riding, yes. But I'm not sure for the wider sales. But you would imagine if they ever did bring it to the United States, especially the Indian one, and because of the dealership network in the United States, you would have thought, wow, it would be a great thing. It'd be interesting to see how many of these bikes sell from India, but also from China as well. When you get to look at the financial reports from Harley-Davidson, how many figures. Actually, you should be able to start getting figures in the second quarter, which is coming to an end now, isn't it? So, yeah, those figures will be coming out soon. So watch out for those if you're interested in that kind of thing. I'm the kind of geek who is, and I'm always interested in that kind of thing, to be honest with you. I'm always interested to see how things... It's not only my impression which I'm interested in. It's also, what is the reality? What is actually happening in the marketplace and everything like that. Right. Okay. So you can carry on showing your support for the channel and doing all that sort of stuff. Let me just give you an update of what's been happening with me and the channel. Basically, I've been making a few more videos recently. Just doing the things that I enjoy doing, really, and finding solutions to kind of problems. I've got a few more videos coming out this week. I made one today or this afternoon. Got caught out in a massive thunderstorm here today, all this afternoon. It was hitting 30 degrees yesterday. I think it was at 28 degrees. I went out on a little test ride, and got caught out in the mother of all thunderstorms, would you believe? I was wearing my open face helmet with my mask thing, and it was almost like I was being pelted by stones as I was. It was really coming down heavy, but there we go. But anyway, so yeah, I've been making a few more videos. I haven't done a live show in a while. That was the purpose, really, because I thought the news had gone a little bit flat. There's speculation and stuff like that, but I thought official news had gone black. I wanted to focus on the websites as well for all news stories there and that kind of thing. And also I was just waiting for more news from Harley-Davidson and other manufacturers, like Indian, Triumph and BMW, that kind of thing as well. So that's why I thought I'd bring those, do another live show and give an update on that. And also I wanted just to take some time away, so take time out. I got other things going on, other projects as well, so I needed to do that. So that's why I haven't really done any more live shows recently. I will do them, but not on a regular basis just yet. I say I've got a few other things going on, but the videos I will try and definitely get a minimum of 2 a week for you. But I say I'm not so concerned about making regular videos. I just still do the odd little short here and there, but it's also just getting back to riding and finding issues and trying to find solutions to different things, which I've been doing. Working on my bike. I've still got this project bike, which it's embarrassing, really. I've got to say it's embarrassing how how the project has just dropped off. Really, I should have finished it by now. I was supposed to be to a rally all weekend, but I was working all weekend. This is my day off today. I had to get up really early this morning, so I couldn't go there last night. By the time I got back and saw it was about 10 o'clock last night. So I thought, do I go to this rally or not? I thought, no, it's just too late. So then, then I was up again and backwards again. And I think, right, okay, what am I doing today? Right, let's start working on this bike. And I never even got round to that anyway. So there we go. Lots of stuff going on in the background, as I'm sure you can imagine. But interesting reaction to the video which I put out about, is it all worth it really, about doing the whole YouTube thing. Got quite a few nice comments. Thank you for those. And also, some emails as well and questions and everything like that. I'm always happy to talk about YouTube and doing YouTube if it helps you out, and also if you want to send me an email, and people do, they ask me and they ask for my opinion or ask how to do stuff, and I'm always happy to do that. I can't always answer everything immediately. It really depends what else I'm up to, but as I say, you always welcome to ask any questions or ask your opinion, or give your advice or give your stories as well. That's always cool. Okay, should we get on to the main story, really? Not the main story, it's not the main discussion point. Let's get into that, shall we? Okay, if you've been living in a cave, you won't have heard that Harley-Davidson have released some new motorcycles. Yes. Timotheus, he says, hello. They changed the game a long time ago. Very easy to identify which riders oh dear, are gay in case of homophobia. Oh really? All right, okay. Well, you could be right. But there we go. Right, so Harley-Davidson, they bring out their new CVOs, right? And we know this. It's not anything new, is it? Let me just put those up. It's not anything new. You got the CVO models, you got the Road Glide, and you got the Street Glide. Very nice too. I think you're expecting me. Oops, sorry, wrong one. There we go. I think you're expecting me to come out and be critical. I'm not critical at all. I always say, I call it as it is. I see it as it is. I think the changes that they've made. Let me just talk about the physical appearance. The changes that they've made. Let's say to the fairings, to the lighting. I like it. I like that. The two colours. I quite like. Yes, I quite like. In terms of actual, just looking at the colours, I like them. The burnt orange, well, no, what's it called? It's called Whiskey Neat and Raven Metallic, isn't it? It's kind of that burnty orange colour. Well, I remember saying this a while ago. I like that colour from back in the day when they were putting it on the bikes, let's say about 5-6 years ago, 7 years ago. I think they offered it as an option on one of the bikes, or when they first came out with it. Very similar, anyway. Very similar, like a metallic-y orange type thing. Maybe they still offer it on some bikes. I don't know. I just haven't really. But there we go. Yeah. So look, I've kind of I've held back on giving an opinion on this. The only thing I made a video the other day is about the variable valve timing, which is so from an aesthetic point of view, I kind of like it. Now let's just get into the tech, right? The tech of it. Okay, the variable valve timing. What do people think of it? Is it a game changer? Is it the thing that's going to keep people interested in Harley-Davidson or not? Is it going to turn people off? Is it going to turn existing riders away from Harley-Davidson? Well, I think people are either going to be turned on or turned off by Harley-Davidson, and it's not going to be based on VVT. It's going to be based on other factors. You're either going to love them or hate them or be indifferent to them based upon other things. This isn't going to be the thing that says, wow, or it's not that special. It's not that significant. I don't believe that is gonna create a big tidal wave of negative opinion or positive opinion either. I think it's just one of those things. But let us know your thoughts on that as well. I think the update on the suspension is really good. Upside down forks on the front. I think it's got a dual shock setup, but it's uprated shocks as well. So that's interesting. More travel. That should be for a better ride. They've obviously listened in those terms of updating the suspension. But I suppose if I am going to question something here, it would be, well, why haven't they updated the suspension on the Tourers in general for the last 2 or 3 years? Because people have been screaming out for it, and the problem is, if you're going to buy one of these bikes and you're going to start investing money in a bike, one of the first things you're probably going to do or want to do is the suspension, as opposed to doing the any engine mods. So from a looks point of view, I like it. From the brakes, new braking setup, and the suspension, yeah, it's good. They're good things that they've added to it. But then you get into the engine. With the engine, it's a 121 engine. Hey, it's all right. That's good. I think a lot of people, myself included, was thinking, okay, is this going to be a 131 engine? They're going to put 131 straight in, especially now because they've come out with that 135 crate motor as well. And I thought, are they going to put this 121 engine in there? And I thought, 131. But it kind of makes sense. It kind of makes sense to just incrementally add it up. It makes a better business sense, really, to not just give the big engine. And I think the more I read comments, or the more I read stories and opinions from people, around the world in press releases and things like that, the more there seems to be this kind of feeling from a lot of people. Well, how big is big enough? How big does an engine need to be before it's just too big? Do you really need it? I don't think there's, within even Harley-Davidson, there is the appetite. Again, this is purely speculation on my part, so I could be, I appreciate I could be completely wrong here. But I don't think, and I've been told this before, I don't think there's the appetite within Harley-Davidson, that, the corridors of power, to give people really big engines. I just don't think there is. I think there's more of a case of, well, let's just see. Just like I said right at the start here with different manufacturers, they're all kind of jockeying for position. Let's just say which way they can go, which way do they can see the short term and the longer term in terms of the technology and what do they want to put on their bikes, really. And I think Harley-Davidson doing this, they're kind of feeling it out a little bit. They're bringing in new technology, but it isn't as if it's game-changing technology for me. I think what they've done, they just modified an engine. That's essentially, quite a substantial modification in terms of the way it operates. But VVT, all that does is changes the valve timing automatically according to RPM and according to some atmospheric conditions. It's done via the ECM. It's going to have some solenoid that's going to rotate the cam ever so slightly. And that's it. It's got liquid cooling on the heads as well. So it's not a liquid cooled bike. It's just got liquid cooling. You got oil. You still got oil cooling there as well. Well, no, there isn't the oil cooler, is there? It's just the liquid cooling on the top. So they haven't gone all the way over to a liquid cooled engine. There isn't that. It's still an air cooled engine. It's just got assisted by some, and I suppose the argument here is, well, why did they go liquid cooled for the heads and not oil cooled? Why abandon the oil cooling in favor of liquid cooling? Are we seeing this as a transition phase? because I think they're stuck in a bit of a dilemma. They are in a bit of a dilemma, Harley-Davidson, in terms of which way to go, and how quickly do they get down that road, as it were. Because you could say, right, because people throw in your face, they say, okay, Indian have already got liquid cooled engines. Yeah, great, and they are great engines, right? And they do well. The whatever it's called, Power Plus engine or whatever it is, nice power delivery is great, right? So people are asking, well, when are Harley-Davidson going to bring out a liquid cooled engine? Well, in the Taurus and that kind of thing. And you say, well, actually, they could have done it. They could have already done it. But it's a case of, well, do they bring out a liquid cooled engine now? And is it going to be outdated as soon as they bring it to market? Because of the way the market is changing in terms of electric, in terms of different fuels, different riding habits, that kind of thing. There's also, the elephant in the room, which I'd always do mention, because I think it's important to mention this, is the price and the cost and how many people are going to buy these things. Now, CVOs, the Icon bikes, the enthusiast bikes, they're essentially limited run bikes. Okay, 1,500, 2,000 bikes a year, something like that. The CVOs are mid-season releases, so they're going to be, if they hit 1,000 bikes by the end of this year, I think they've done well. I would say they've done very well. But the problem is you've got a base price here in the UK. I don't know what it is in different parts of the world, so obviously you have to look in your own market, and I'm sure you already know, right? But it does seem to be that there is a big disparity between the stock bike, the bike, the CVO in the stock colour, which is the greyish colour, whatever that is called, and this Whiskey Neat Raven Metallic, which over here in the UK is £6,400 more just for the change in colour. Okay, granted, yes, these are bespoke colours and things like that, but that's a lot of money. So you're talking what, 44,000 for the bike now, if you want it in that colour, but 38,000 in change if you didn't, right? Okay, they're expensive bikes, but again, this is nothing new. We know Harley-Davidson sell expensive bikes. This is nothing new, so we shouldn't really get wound up about it. But the issue here is how many bikes will be sold, and is this enough of a change to attract people to it? So if it was as I say, they're kind of sitting on the fence. They're kind of paralyzed by not knowing what to do. In my mind, anyway, this is what I'm seeing. Because if they say, right, if this was a liquid-cooled engine, a brand new liquid-cooled engine that they're bringing out on the CVOs, and they say to you and I, they say, right, CVOs now, next year, 2024, this will go into the touring motorcycles, okay? And then we are planning a liquid-cooled engine into the Softails mid-season next year, or it might even be the same, or 2025, whatever, right? That would be game-changing. That would be something that would attract people. And I think people may be more interested in a liquid-cooled CVO than in a liquid assisted cooling CVO with variable valve timing. I think that's where it is. I think that's where they could have gone. Obviously they didn't, but again, because you don't really know which way that market is. Is there an appetite for a Harley-Davidson with a liquid cooled engine? I think there is. I think they've been screaming out for this for years. I mean, as I say, but there possibly is a reason why there isn't one. Because there might just not be an appetite for it. People love Harley-Davidson for Harley-Davidson, right? And, we get caught up in this kind of whole air-cooled, liquid-cooled kind of, versus each other, which is best. The thing is, when you're on the open road, right? An air-cooled engine and liquid-cooled engine cools in exactly the same way. In that, you've got most of the cooling comes from the airflow. Most of the cooling, the secondary, mostly, is oil. Okay? The liquid cooling is just an addition. It's just an addition. So it helps. But you're still getting most of that cooling from air and oil. But the liquid cooling does much better in slow-moving traffic, of course. Okay, so that's where it is. Especially if you've got fan-assisted radiators as well, or fan blowing air through. But when it's a really hot day and you've got, engines suffer anyway, but air-cooled ones suffer even more. Haydar, hello there. I was wondering, I think they might customize the 2023-24 same looks on the Road Glide, the Street Glide, long bag. Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see what they do next year, actually. And I think for me, as I think I said in the video as well, it's not about the CVOs that I'm kind of interested in. What I'm really interested in, from a kind of, got my thinking cap on, is whatever technology they've put into the CVOs next year, 2024, will that filter down into the Tourers, or are they going to go that next step and make a liquid-cooled engine? Yeah, a liquid-cooled engine for the Tourers. But then you're already backpedaling. You say, well, actually, we've already got a liquid-cooled engine. The one that's the Revolution Max engine, right? They've already got that. So why? And we talked about this before on this channel. Why not just put the Revolution Max engine in a touring frame? But it would have to be a new touring frame. So where do they go with this? This is the question. Where do they go with it? And would people want a liquid-cooled engine in a Harley-Davidson? I think there would be a section of the community that would welcome it. But I think it's got to look right. It's got to feel right. It's got to ride right. It's got to have similar characteristics. Do you know what I mean? So they could disguise, just like they've done with the CVO with this kind of cooling, they could disguise the air-cooled engine, but actually it will be a liquid-cooled engine. They could disguise it. But the problem is it would really change the look of the bike. You put a big radiator on the front of a bike, it definitely changes the look of it. And we know that with the Indians as well. Yeah, we know that. But as I say, it really depends. I'll always say this, in terms of the Harley-Davidson versus the Indian. I think the Indians have still got the better package, technology package for the most part. But I think Harley-Davidson got them on looks. But there's so many similarities now between the two brands. There's so many in terms of what they are. And sometimes you're just picking at things really to try and find a difference. But I'm not sure that there is a great deal of difference. But I think there could be an appetite for a liquid-cooled engine from Harley-Davidson. And I just don't think that this CVO is enough of a game changer right now. Now, what will be a game changer, as I say, is what happens next year with the Taurus and the Softails with the M8 engine, right? What will happen there? Will they offer this technology on there? I'm not sure if there's an appetite for this on any Softail rider. Perhaps I'm If you had to say to me, Alf, would you like a new Softail with this technology on there? I'd be like, no, not interested. Not interested. What about on Tourer? I'd be like, yeah, maybe. And having the rider modes and things like that. Yeah, okay, I get that. I get that. Because I think you're definitely into you're definitely more looking at technology that is suited to touring motorcycles rather than Softails. But but that's not to say that they shouldn't be having it as well. So I think it's a very interesting time for Harley-Davidson, because I see them at being a technological, how can I say this properly? A technological crossroads. They're a technological crossroads where I think they need to change. Sorry, I just tapped the mic. They need to change, or they need to evolve further, as all motorcycle manufacturers, all automotive manufacturers need to do. But it's about judging the right direction to take and how far they go down that line. Now, we already know that the CEO, Jochen Zeitz, who's moved away from the live wire CEO, and I think some publications were trying to make a big deal about this last week. But actually, that was always planned. That was always planned for him to be CEO of the Livewire, and then they were gonna step away when they found a new one. But anyway, so he's made it perfectly clear that he sees Harley-Davidson in the future being 100% electric. But the point is that nobody can see into the future. You can only kind of guess to a certain degree. Nobody can see into the future. So if you can make a statement like that in terms of Harley-Davidson in the future, well, probably most manufacturers in the long future are going to be that way. Yeah, we're already seeing something like this going that way. But it's not quite there, is it? It's not quite ready, and it's not the technology in the bikes or in the cars. Again, it's infrastructure. That's the thing. It's infrastructure, because not everybody lives in a house. Not everybody lives in where they can park their car right next to their house on a drive. People live in flats. People live in terraced houses. Park on the street. So how are they going to charge their vehicles? Okay, so is charging your vehicle going to be more expensive than putting fuel in it? That kind of thing. So there's lots of things. There's lots of things to consider with the electric bike market. And especially now that there is a bit of a pushback with alternative fuels, with synthetic fuels, with the production of that and engines to match that. India, as I said, they've already brought prototypes of motorcycles with E100. So 100% ethanol, 80% ethanol, 85% ethanol bikes. They've already got them. They've already got them. They're already taking bikes, older bikes, and they're pushing them up to E20 already. These are older bikes that were never designed for E20. They're already changing them to E20. So manufacturers have alternatives already to electric. But we know the problem with electric for Harley-Davidson is that it's not synonymous with them or the experience. And I suppose this was my video the other day when I talked about VVT on the CVOs. Will it destroy the riding experience from Harley-Davidson because of the restriction, the limitation of initially of being able to modify that bike? You can modify anything, but how easy is it going to be with VVT? And it's going to change things. Liquid-cooled engines will change that experience as well. Morris, hello. Thank you for joining. Liquid-cooled changes the sound quite significantly. Absolutely right. And it changes the feeling of that bike. It changes what's the word I'm looking for? The sound, the rhythm, the cadence, the vibration, everything like that. Dutch, hello. Why haven't they thought about the windshields articulating like BMW has? There's lots of that. You're thinking along the same lines as I am. There's lots of technology or lots of ideas from other manufacturers that you think actually they could incorporate that into bikes. I'm not just talking Harley-Davidson here. I'm talking about all manufacturers, right? You say, well, actually, they've got a good idea. You're surprised that they haven't tried to copy that, but the problem is, if all the manufacturers copy each other, what happens is you have the same machine, you have the same bike. We've already got so much overlap in the car world and the bike world in terms of how things look, how things operate, that you think, well, actually, having a company that sort of stand back from all of that and just do their own thing is kind of refreshing. My question has always been, for a company like Harley-Davidson, but not just them, is how long can this go on for, with them either not moving with the times, but instead of moving with their own time, I'm talking about moving with the times. How long can they be a manufacturer without liquid cooled engine bikes in touring chassis? Why haven't they really exploited the Revolution Max engine to its furthest? They're very intelligent people at Harley-Davidson. They're boffins and they're superior marketing people. They obviously know what they're doing, and they're obviously having these discussions, right? They're definitely having these discussions. Oops, wrong one. But the question is, what are they thinking? What is their strategy? What is in R&D? What are they looking at right now? I believe there were patents that were coming out. Actually, there's been quite a few patents coming out the last few weeks from different manufacturers. I was told there's more patents coming out from Harley-Davidson, or they're filing more patents as well for new designs. But that's just something I want to hold everybody's horses on that one, because that happens all the time. It doesn't mean that any of this will ever come to market. This is just sometimes protecting intellectual property. That's why they do these, file patents. It doesn't mean that it'll ever come to market or anything will ever be produced. But look, they've got liquid cooled engines. They've got those designed. It's whether they can match that kind of engine in a motorcycle, and will there be an appetite for it? Is this a big enough game changer for you? Irrespective of the price, irrespective of what sort of motorcycle, irrespective of what kind of person is going to be able to afford these bikes, ride these bikes, will want to ride these bikes. When will they ride them? Will they only ride them in, dry days? Are they going to be all year round bikes, for 40,000+ pound motorcycles? These are, regardless of what you think, every now and again when I talk about price or I talk about things, you'll always get the comment from somebody, well, obviously you can't afford it, so you shouldn't be riding. Hey, why don't you go and ride a cheap, Chinese bike or something, if that's all you can afford? It's almost like somebody is saying to you, oh, well, hey, it's only for the rich guys, so only for the rich guys, and that's it. You're not good enough because you can't, And it's almost like, what are you thinking when you make a stupid comment like that? When you're making a stupid comment, that all of a sudden somebody's having a rational thought, trying to raise an issue in a rational way about price, but also about how that affects the people's ability to buy it and how many people want to buy it. Then you're sort of saying, well, if you can't afford it, you shouldn't be. And it's just, I don't care how expensive they are. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. All I've ever said is that I would never spend that amount of money on a motorcycle. In general, I would never spend that amount of money on a motorcycle. Of course, other people will, and that's fine. But if you're trying to say that Harley-Davidson will remain a big motorcycle manufacturer, then in order to remain a big motorcycle manufacturer, they have to sell in numbers. They have to, and we're not talking about profitability here. We're talking about in numbers. They have to sell in numbers. They have to sell in numbers to be a big motorcycle manufacturer. And if they do that, they have to produce bikes at a much cheaper price. So the Chinese bike, the Indian bike, yes, fantastic in terms of addressing that. those bikes for me should be sold in other markets. Whether that will ever happen or not, I doubt it, but it'd be interesting to see. So that gives them the opportunity to sell these big bikes, but they're not going to sell many of them. I think back in the day when CVOs were first launched, I think they were in the region of about 3,500 bikes a year, maybe 4,000 bikes a year sold. That's significantly dropped over the years. I think it's in the region. Of about 1,000 bikes a year. I'm not sure on the figures, but I was told something like that. The other thing that people are not really mentioning here is the let me get rid of that. Is the trike? The CVO trike is nowhere to be found. So I know they don't sell in great numbers, of course, but where is the trike? So I mean, I think something like that, this CVO, this technology, would work. It works well. I don't think there's going to be an issue here in terms of it working. But with any new technology, as we always know, it needs some field testing. And you're only going to have the problems come out when these bikes are being sold and people are riding them. But they've obviously done their research, they've done their testing, they've put the miles on the test bikes to see how they work, and put the engines on the test beds, on the bench testing, and I'm sure they're all working there, so that's absolutely fine. But there's always going to be, it's like putting anything in the hands of a child, right? If you want to expose the frailties of anything, put it in the hands of a child, because they'll find the frailties, they'll break it within. The indestructible item will always be broken by a child, won't it? But we are the children in this regard. The indestructible motorcycle, the CVO, the expensive one, the top of the range, their top of the line bike. It's only until it comes to market we're going to find, hey, this is what we. We like this, we don't like it, this is working, this is broken, why is that broken? The VVT isn't working very well, or it does work well. We don't know until we know. So bringing it out on a CVO straight away, interesting, all I would say that. The things, you've got nothing to go on here, that's the problem. So for somebody, I think it's a bit of a leap of faith, isn't it? It's a leap of faith for anybody buying a brand new CVO here, because you're not just buying a brand new CVO with a bigger engine. You're effectively buying a brand new CVO with a modified engine. How's that going to work? I think I heard somebody say during the week and say, well, about the sound. As long as the sound's all right, then it doesn't matter if you're gonna modify it. And I think it's true to say that most people who buy Tourers specifically don't modify them as much. There's a lot more stockishness. There's a lot more stock. They might do exhaust changes and stuff like that, but there isn't the great, because it's that kind of bike. It's not, it's not a bike. It's not a YouTube bike where people seem to be modifying their bikes and upstaging and putting this every 2 seconds, which is great. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the real world. Real worlders, most people don't want to do that, can't afford that. They'll live these kind of dreams of changing their bike by watching somebody else do it, but they wouldn't do it themselves. And they think, well, I'm quite happy just having a stock bike with everything. So from that point of view, in VVT and all the other changes they've done on this bike, actually probably most people won't even change it. They kind of listen to the exhaust sound and think, yeah, okay, that works all right, or it doesn't. Maybe they'll want to upgrade the exhaust just for a different tone on the exhaust. But in terms of the performance of it, they'll probably think, yeah, obviously, yeah, I totally forgot about the infotainment system, which has been upgraded as well. So they'll probably look at all these other refinements on the bike as a much more of a reason to keep keep with this bike, rather than keep this with this bike stock, rather than be so concerned, oh no, I need to change this, I need to change that, you know, or be frustrated that they can't change it. So I think this is where Harley-Davidson are looking at this and saying, well, you know, why we can produce a bike here that people just don't need to change, or they won't want to change. Which which I said in the video, it kind of flies in the face of buying Harley-Davidson, making it your own, doing your own thing. Now, of course, you can do that, make your own, in terms of just the way it looks, the aesthetics. But in terms of performance-wise, well, maybe you just won't want to. Maybe the most of people won't. And certainly initially, there'll be restrictions on what you can and can't do, or limitations, or lack of choice, I should say. Lack of choice. Yeah, that's probably the best word. But in time, I'm sure things will, you know, be invented. People will make things for it as well. Yeah, but it's you know, it's not a game changer for me. And let us know in the comments if you're watching this later. Let us know if you're watching now. You know, is it a game changer? Excuse me, the CVO. I think it's a nice addition. I think it's a nice step up in the 121. I'm of the mind that you don't need a massive engine on a bike. You know, I just of the mind that you just don't need to keep on going bigger and bigger and bigger. It is just, you know, willy waving basically. It's just, you know, it's you know, measuring yourself up to somebody else when you don't really need to measure yourself up at all. Having the bit of extra power, especially on a heavy tour, but they've made this lighter. I think they've cut down, was it 15 kilos, 18 kilos, something like that? Can't remember, 30 pounds. You know, so it's you know, you've got it's still a heavy bike though, still a heavy bike. And, you know, having a 121 in a touring bike, this bike, is like possibly having a 107, 114, 107, I'd say, in a Softail. You know, I mean, but then again, I've got to say, you know, I've ridden 114s and 117s in Tourers, and the power doesn't seem to be, you know, even with a 114, the power, even a 107. I rode a 107 Tourer last year before. I can't remember, and it wasn't underpowered. It wasn't underpowered because there's so much torque in these things, isn't there? It's not as if you're saying, "Oh God, you know, I wish this bike had so much more power. It's so lethargic," you know. Because even when you're going 2 up and you've got bags on and everything, all you're doing is rolling on the throttle on a little bit more. That's it, just to get a little bit more juice. But actually, having the bigger engine makes a bit of difference, but it's not a huge amount of difference. So having a 121 in this touring frame is going to make a nice difference. Don't get me wrong, as did the 117 made a nice difference over the 107 and a 114. But it's not as if, you know, they're exactly struggling with those earlier engines. You know, so the 114, you know, I hear time and time again people who've got old shovel heads, old, you know, twin cams, whatever, diners, whatever. And they're saying, look, yeah, you know, I've got my bike, even older bikes. You know, they say, yeah, it's perfectly fine. You know, I upstaged it a little bit, you know, nowhere near a 107, you know, and they're saying that, or a 114, nowhere near it. But it's more than enough than I'll ever need on a Harley. And that's it, you know. The question is, how big do you have to go? And I honestly don't believe, and I could be wrong, if Harley-Davidson, if you're listening, I would welcome any clarification on this. But I just don't think that there's any great enthusiasm from the company to give people bigger and bigger engines, because where does it end? I'm not talking about, crate engines or upstaging, because that is basically, you're saying you're giving somebody the opportunity to make their engine more and more powerful, hot rodding your bike, that kind of thing. That's a different issue. That's a different thing. I'm talking just delivering stock bikes, right, as a platform to build upon in the Harley-Davidson manner. I just don't think that they need to give you and I bigger engines. Now, what I think they need to do, and they've done it now, and I've always said this, is give you smaller engines, much smaller engines, much cheaper bikes. But as will possibly still be more expensive than a competitive bike at that size, the 300, 400cc bike, whatever. But it'll be a much, much cheaper way to own a Harley-Davidson, ride a Harley-Davidson. Even if you don't believe it is a proper Harley-Davidson, because it wasn't made in the United States, or it wasn't in proper, engine, whatever. But the things that I've been screaming out about Harley-Davidson, for me, they are delivering. The unfortunate thing is they're not delivering it in where I live, but they're delivering in India and China. But they are delivering it. But so when it comes to bikes, these ones, I don't get worked up. I point out that they're expensive bikes, and they're too expensive for the modern, so for the everyday rider, for the person who just doesn't earn a lot of money, let's say, or doesn't earn a 200, 300, 400,000 pounds, dollars a year, whatever. They're just a regular person earning 30, 40, whatever it is. They've got a family to feed, maybe a young family. They got car payments and truck payments, and they've got a mortgage on their house, and they got children with expensive children, aren't? Maybe you got 2.4 children, you got 3 cats and 2 dogs, and then things go wrong, and you need to spend. Then you're getting pressure from your family and your wife, because you want to go on holiday and all this sort of stuff. There's always a pull on resources when you've got limited resources or limited funds, right? But if you've got so many funds that, you could easily pay for all that, then sure, you're going to be able to easily afford a bike that is really, really expensive. And you may find that there is value in it, because you like Harley-Davidson and you like what it is, and you don't mind spending all this money, right? But other people would. Other people would. You can't deny that the most people can't afford this. It'll be, Dutch, they've never had success with small displacement bikes. Well, I think we're talking about different eras, though, Dutch. We're talking about different eras. The AMF years, they had a lot of bikes. They had a lot of bikes, and they had a lot of bikes that were selling in numbers, but they were a basket case of a company. That's the problem. They're a basket case of a company. So you could argue now they're in a much better position, and they've done it in the right way in terms of how they're producing bikes. As I said, I think they're looking at this in the right way, because they don't think that these bikes will sell in any numbers in the United States. I don't think they would either, but I do think that they would sell in lots of other markets around the world that do appreciate small bikes. So I think you're right, but they didn't have success with the Aeromaki bikes. But I think they were decent enough bikes in concept. I just don't think they were made very well. I just don't think they had a good ownership. So then you're looking at the other bikes in later years, the street bikes, and then they went by the wayside as well. But it's a similar kind of thing in that they didn't target those bikes properly. They didn't market them properly. They didn't price them properly. And I think they were just a poor design, in all fairness. Dutch, they had the 750 and 500cc bikes. Yes, That's right. Yeah, sorry. Never worked out. That's right. And these are the street bikes, the street cub and everything like that, because they just weren't decent bikes. They were overpriced for what they were. Okay, they were too expensive, when you're considering the competitors. They were built in India, and they were going to be a lot for the Indian market, but they were rejected by the Indian market. So if they're rejected by the Indian market, which is the biggest motorcycle market in the world, and they're not really designed that great, and they're not really seen as being, Harley-Davidsons, then what are you doing? You've actually produced a bike that you can't sell. You actually produce a bike, or you can't sell in numbers, because your biggest market that you wanted, that's aiming for that bike, doesn't want it. It's too expensive for most people in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh and places like that. People didn't want it because it's just too expensive. So you're kind of lost. So again, that is not necessarily the problem with the bike. At that point, that's about how it's been produced, how it's being marketed, and where they want to sell it. It's like these CVOs, road glide and the street glide. Let's just say they went to any developing world, any developing country, Africa, South America, India, whatever, a place like that. And you say, right, we're going to try and sell this bike in this market. The price of these bikes will probably be more than anybody could ever earn in a lifetime in some places, right? So, it's never going to sell. It's you probably have one or two people in the whole country that could afford it, But that's about it. Most people would never be able to buy it, never be able to afford it. So, you've got to target the market properly, and I think they've probably learnt their lesson. This is where I see a company that I think is still struggling, and I think they've had a good financial progress the last couple of years, but I think I've always said this year is going to be a pivotal year for this company and all motorcycle manufacturers as well, because you still got the problems with the supply chains. They had to close their factory down this week, wasn't it? In York, Pennsylvania. Supply chain issues as well. It's about getting products to them. And this is where the CVO has been launched. So they launch it one day, the next day they close down the market. Sorry, they closed down the factory. Interestingly, I think this is only really going to affect the American market. And you actually ask yourself, is the American market going to be affected by the shutdown in the assembly plant? Because let's say if they shut it down for 10 days and then they reopen, well, there's probably enough stock in there, even at the factory and also at the dealerships, which may or may not be selling. I don't know. I hear that the bikes aren't selling. Of course, people say, "Oh, those bikes are always selling." Yeah, of course they are, but it's always in the numbers. Is it the same numbers as it were before? But you would think, well, actually, if there's enough stock at the dealerships and there's enough stock waiting to be shipped out the dealerships, so they can afford to have a shutdown here. For the company, obviously, there's going to be employee relations that's going to be affected and all that sort of stuff, and incomes. So it's a bad deal. It's definitely a bad news to shut down a factory, no doubt. But what I'm saying is, in terms of motorcycle supply, for the short term, there won't be an issue in the United States. However, for us, let's say, and around the world and in Europe, we get our bikes from Thailand for the most part. They come from Thailand. So actually, there shouldn't really be much of a delay in any bikes coming. But, Harley-Davidson have been dealing with delays and slow arrivals around the world for years now. In terms of parts. You go to any parts, speak to anybody about parts, and some people really struggle with parts, and some or having their bikes fixed because the parts never arrived. Other people don't. I mean, but then again, some people like myself, for the most part, if I'm waiting on a part, it's never been a problem because I've never had to have a part that stopped me riding so far. But if I had to have parts, let's say engine parts and stuff like that, that stop me riding for a long period of time, yeah, I can see how frustrating it would be. I can see how frustrating it would be. But the part supply issue has been a problem here in Europe, especially for a long period of time. The way it goes, and because of import taxes and all this sort of stuff, there is always an issue. So it can be a problem. In the United States and Canada, it's not much of an issue for the most part, because you're living in the same country, and the part supply is much better than it is over here. Because what people don't know from the United States or from wherever else they're being shipped by, this is bikes and parts. They go into a European central hub, and that is Belgium, I believe. And then from Belgium, I think it's Belgium. I could be wrong. It could be Holland, but I could be, if you know, let us know in the comments later. But then, let's say all the dealerships in Europe, if they can't find it at another dealership, they always go to that hub there, and the hub, which supplies the whole of Europe, then ships it out to wherever the dealership is. So it's a different setup. Anthony, GM85, recently found your channel and it's super informative for modern Harley-Davidson. You give clear and simple instructions. Keep it up. Thank you very much. Hope you've been enjoying the last few videos that I've been doing. I've always liked working on bikes. I've always liked, but I find it. I've got to be careful how I say this. I've always enjoyed working on motorcycles. I enjoy riding them more, but I always enjoyed working on motorcycles, fixing them, building them, making custom bikes, that kind of thing. But I've always found it boring to talk about it or to make videos about it. It doesn't really give me a lot of creative satisfaction to make a video about building a bike. However, what does give me great creative satisfaction about working on bikes is anytime I find something obscure or something that I think that nobody's really done before or nobody's really talked about before. Because I could go through the whole bike of any bike and just say, okay, this is how you do that. This is how you do that. This is how you undo that bolt, do that. But that's not what I like to do. What I like to do is find solutions to things or find alternative ways of doing it. And certainly for you guys out there, is just to say, look, this is what you're supposed to do, or this is what the manual says, or this is what specific tool you need. But actually, you could do it like this, or you could do it with a much cheaper way. So that's what I like to do, because I think there is no doubt the Harley-Davidsons, for me, have got so much better in recent years. I know this is a subjective thing. I know this is an opinion thing about what you prefer. If you prefer the old Harleys, the shovels, heads, the twin cams, whatever, Evos, whatever engine it is, or whatever bike it is. This is a subjective thing, right? But in terms of technology, they've evolved, and the parts have got better, and they're stronger. And that's why the engines are bigger, pumping out more horsepower, pumping out more torque. Because they've just evolved. They've just got better and better and better. It's amazing, isn't it? You have a channel like mine who is questioning, raising issues, critical, you could say. People have called me negative, all that sort of stuff about talking about the technology, because it is old technology which they've just keep on built on. And that's why I sometimes think, actually, do you know what? They don't need to change. They don't need to be a Ducati. They don't need to be a BMW. They just need to be Harley-Davidson. And Harley-Davidson, who make good air-cooled bikes or good old-school bikes. And this is when I talk about working on bikes. I much prefer to work on older bikes or bikes that they don't have as much technology on them. It's not about the fear of the technology. I just don't find it interesting. That's the thing. I find it interesting from a technology point of view to work on things or to find out how it works. But I don't find it interesting from a point that gives me joy. Let's put it that way. And so this translates into the kind of content that I make, and that I don't enjoy making that kind of videos on stuff that is just standard mechanical stuff. I'd rather be finding a particular problem or trying to sort out something and trying to say, well, actually, you could do it like this or do it like that. So the classic one was the ACRs on my bike. Now, let me just give you a quick story behind this. So a few months ago, I noticed that there was this clapping sound, slight clapping sound, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, or louder and louder and louder. So this is a few weeks ago now, quite a few weeks ago now. I went to the my local dealership. I spoke to one of the techs, and I asked. I said, do you know what this is? Because I've looked everywhere on the bike. I can't seem to find anything. The bike is still running absolutely fine, but it's just this clapping sound. Don't know what it is. So we, both discussed, well, exhaust leaks, a tune, that kind of thing. Because at that point, you don't really know. The diagnosis of a problem is probably the hardest, but also in many ways, it's the most interesting thing to trying to get to grips with. So for me, trying to find out what this problem was a difficult one. And also, you're getting lots of suggestions from people. It's this, it's that. You got to try that. So you think, okay, I'll try it out. I'll figure it out. So this is this slows the whole diagnosis process down because you're trying to, find out what's going on. But anyway, so cut a long story short, because if you just watch my videos, how it's progressed, right? It was indeed, as I thought, it was the ACR, and lots of people were sending me emails about ACRs, so thanks about that as well. So I thought, right, okay, so that's what it was. I got one and found I had different scenarios which I was testing them, and different scenarios of which I was, trying to break things down so people could understand it a little bit better. But then when I eventually took one off, I could see that this is already reported back, that one of the end caps of the ACR had completely blown. There's nothing there. So that's what was making the sound. It was also loose, but it was also making this sound. The other one was which I damaged, unfortunately, when I was trying to. So I've got another one coming. Was perfectly intact. So now I'm riding. Now I've got it all fixed. Now the bike is riding like it should. It's sounding like it should. In other words, it's got the M8 engine sound. It's got the little ticking sound that I can hear as I'm riding along. So that's that's the Harley-Davidson the M8 sound. Beezer the Biker, glad to catch another live show. Beezer, I'm surprised you haven't stage one your bike. Makes a world of difference. I have stage one my bike. I've got a tuner on it. I've got a different exhaust on it, and I've got a high flow air filter on it. So I have stage one it. So yeah, there we go. I just don't have. I have a very interestingly about the air filters. I actually did a whole investigation on the difference of the air filters and what's the performance gain on the air filters. And I tell you what, there's so hardly anything. It's unbelievable. Yeah, it's there's hardly any difference in it. The only difference is in surface area on the filter. If you've got a bigger surface area, even a stock air filter is, would you believe, is sometimes better than what is claimed to be a high flow air filter. Yeah. So I won't go into now because that's about a 3-hour discussion on that thing alone. But there's actually, if you look at the data and you look at it, and this is why they don't produce the data. They don't openly tell you like the mass flow rates and all this sort of stuff of the filters, because they know. Well, not that they know. You got to be careful how you say these things, but it's very hard to show something. So when you're talking about now, I had toyed about going for a stage 2, and then putting on some like a heavy breather, something like that. But one, I don't particularly like the look of heavy breathers, I got to say. But you know, for that's just one thing. Or I don't think I'd like the look of it on mine. 2, because I ride all year round as well, and ride in crappy conditions. You know, I'd always be concerned about the effect of that. So I always wanted something more stealth-like. I always wanted something that's not really exposed. So yeah, I've just got a high flow air filter on there, and yeah, it runs sweet. But the bike itself runs great, and so that's the sort of videos that I've always enjoyed making, is trying to find out what is actually going on, what is the differences, what can you do, what should you do, if there's a little problem, how can you fix it, or how can you modify something in a different way. When we talked about like engine breathers and just coming up with designs and little solutions to make your own vented dipstick and stuff like that. I think those are the kinds of things that I really like, or just little solutions for things like that people either don't know. Obviously they do now, because I've done the videos, of course, but or manufacturers won't tell you, or you know, you go to a dealership or you speak to a tech and they'll say, oh, hey, you know, da da da, and they may say, you know, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. Now, they may be programmed to tell that you can't do that, or they genuinely just don't know. And this is not a slight on them. I'm not having a go at any tech at a dealership, but they just may not know all the intricacies of something. I've always say this about any person who is interested about mechanical and electrical work on the bike or on the car that they own, right? If they really like to do deep dives and start working on the bike themselves, if you work on it all the time, one, you know your bike better than anybody else, right? But also, and you know how it's supposed to run and how it does run and all that sort of stuff. But also, the chances are, if you've got some mechanical background, mechanical expertise, and also if you've got the tools as well, this is a big one, if you've got the correct tools, right, the chances are that you're probably going to know a lot more about that model of bike, or that group of bikes, let's say Softails in my case, right, than many of the other techs have done. I know that I've spoken to different techs or different YouTubers, right, and I've sent them emails and said, did you know that there was so-and-so here and so-and-so there? And they said, no, had no idea. There we go. So, you know, sometimes this is not me just trying to say, hey, I know everything. What I'm saying is anybody can be very focused on the bike that they have and learn as much as they can of their own bike. And you can almost be an expert. But I tell you what, it does really help. It really helps when you want to seek a second opinion. And I go to a dealership to seek a second opinion sometimes, or I'll openly ask, you know, for a second opinion from you guys, right? But you know, when somebody says something to you and you're like, it's not that. No, it's not that. You know, or, it could be that. Yeah, it could be that. You know, because, you know, you want to hear somebody else's opinion because, you know, it gives you ideas. But it makes you much more aware of what could be right or what couldn't be right, you know. Or when somebody is just saying, yeah, no, I've already covered that. I already know what that is, you know. So that's why, you know, and that's the sort of content that I really enjoy doing. You know, it's finding, and that the problem is that you kind of exhausted the stuff that is on a particular bike, right? I've pretty much found everything, or some of the things are so. I could make another 100 videos, seriously, just on the Softail alone, about things that I've found. Honestly, I could make another 500 videos on just doing technical videos on it as well. But it's not really. It's not decent enough. Anyway, I've rambled on. I've gone off on a big subject here. But only, in terms of working on bikes and things like that, if, let's say, I bought a brand new CVO, a brand new bike, I wouldn't be working on it. The chances are that most people would not be working on their bike or working on these big bikes anymore with the technology. One, because of cost, one of tools, one of expertise, all that sort of stuff. But also, you've got dealerships there who are geared up for it, or mechanics that are geared up for it. So let's say for the first couple of years, it'll go there under warranty anyway. So second of all, if you're going to work on these bikes, then you've got to kind of know what you're doing. Even though they are simple bikes and they're old technology, actually there's a lot of technology in there. But the thing is that bikes in general, right across the board, not just Harley-Davidson, bikes in general, are so much better than they used to be. They're so much more reliable than they used to be. They're not pissing out oil everywhere. They're not breaking down every 5 minutes. And if you take care of your bike, just basic stuff really, it is just regular servicing and not. Bees of the bikes, you talk about upstaging. The biggest thing that affects bikes' reliability is being upstaged or customized, or work being done onto them, and the work not being done correctly. That's one. Or when that work is done, then people are just overstressing the engine especially, but just riding too aggressively. And that's what happens. You overstress something on a regular basis and it's just going to give. That's as simple as that. And then the bike is just not in balance anyway. So the bike's not in balance in terms of performance, in terms of drivetrain, in terms of brakes, suspension, everything. But the actual numbers of things that break than they shouldn't is, relatively speaking, it's a small percentage. Most of this stuff it's kind of self-induced. It's something that you as a rider have done, or it's just something, the work that's been done, or the way you're riding it has been done. So let's just say, bring this right up to modern times now. Right now I've just cleaned out my air cleaner, and it's okay. I've got a video coming out which will explain the results of just by cleaning out my oil cleaner, I should say, my oil cleaner, oil cooler. Crikey, I can't even talk. My oil cooler, and just, you'll be surprised at the difference that makes. You'll be surprised, and I was surprised. But if I hadn't thought about this a little bit more, I thought, why is my engine running hotter than I think it should have done? And I didn't think about this oil cooler. I thought, actually, let me have a deep look at that and painstakingly go through it, as you see in my videos today and shorts today, going through it with a little needle, unblocking everything. My bike would have just been keep on running hotter and hotter. So that is me, self-induced problem on that engine. Now, does this mean that it's totally my fault because the oil cooler and the voltage regulator for me is in the wrong place? It's too low down. It's not protected enough from the elements. Okay, so that's a design issue, but that's not going to change. So it's the way you manage these things. There we go. Beast of the bike. Oh, nice. It looked stock. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to look stock. Yes, it's supposed to look stock. I much prefer stealthy bikes. No, what's not stealthy bikes? Sleeper bikes. Sleeper cars. That's what I particularly like. Did you find any of your missing tools? No, Morris, I haven't. It's driving me insane. It's absolutely driving me insane where these tools are. I'm waiting for them. I'm waiting for them to release a 135 block. Yes, they already have the 131 available. By the time you spend the money to stage for it, it makes more sense to long block it. Yeah, so the 135, is that already come out in the United States and not elsewhere? But it's... I don't know enough about the 135, so please excuse me. But I believe the 135 is exactly the same as the 131, but it's got a different crankshaft on it, and it's got a different stroke on it, I believe. Is that correct? But everything else is the same. I think the pistons are the same, the cylinders are the same, pretty much everything is the same as a 131. It's just got a different crank on it, which just changes it from a 131 to a 135. If I'm wrong, please let me know, and please tell me. The new Harleys are great machines. Yeah, I think they are. I've got to say, I think they are. I was listening to a podcast. Who are the guys? Hold on, let me just see if I can. The who is it? Australian duo. I forgot what they are. They're Australian. They do a podcast. Who are they? That's it. Harley-Davidson podcast. Let me try that. Who are they? No, not Blocker. No, not them. What are they called? No. Oh God, I can't believe I've forgotten who they are. Anyway, they're a small channel. Go check them out. Yeah, I'm sure you'll find out who they are. I'm sure you'll know who they are. They are, crikey, who are they called? It's always the way, isn't it? When it shows up in your feed and you can't. Let's go. Let's try this. Australia. I'm totally unprepared for this. I should have. That's it. Here we go. Hogs, Cogs, and 2 Aussie Flogs. There you go. Hogs, Cogs, and 2 Aussie Flogs. Yeah. So I'm not sure how long they've been going. They've got just over 1,000 subscribers, but really good. Really good. You know, and they talk about the different things. And they've spoken to a few people. It's great. I like that kind of thing. I like you know, that kind of stuff. It's kind of, you know, bit like me, bit of sort of no nonsense type of stuff, and I like that. You know, call a spade, as it were, in terms of Harley-Davidson, whatever. But anyway, so they went off on a complete tangent. They were interviewing the guy who is in the $1 Million Bogan videos all the time. At the dealership, at the Geelong Harley-Davidson dealership, the guy called Colin, the owner or part owner and mechanic there, or you know, whatever, master mechanic, master tech. And anyway, they were asking him about this sort of thing, you know, and he's just said what I've just said. You know, the engines are that much better. They're much more reliable. They're producing so much more power now, and they're just machine better. I remember talking to, as I said, I've said this before, speaking to one of the race engineers, race mechanics from Harley-Davidson for their King of the Baggers series. It was over here in the UK last November at one of the big shows. And, you know, he was talking about, I was just talking to him about the parts on the bike. And he was saying a lot of the parts on the bike are just standard stock parts on the bike in terms of the engine. A lot of it, he said, and obviously a lot of it is just Screaming Eagle parts. But he said most of this you would not, you don't think that we're using specialist parts here. We're just using stock parts, which we may slightly modify. We may shave a bit here, lighten it a little bit, but you know they are stock parts. And I was like, what, really? Are you sure? I thought he was winding me up, to be honest with you, because he was talking about compensators, he was talking about clutches, he was talking about all this sort of stuff, and I was just like, are you sure you're only using stock parts? And he's going, yeah, stock parts. I mean, obviously the whole bike is a race bike and modified and all that sort of stuff, but you know, so again, it is how you're riding the bike, yeah, and how you modify that bike will determine the reliability of that bike. And also, but the number one thing that I think we can all agree on is just about servicing, taking care of your bike, regular maintenance, that kind of thing. And it's stuff like that I find, wow, I didn't even think about that. Wow, yeah. And this oil cooler thing that I found out the last week or so, that I just suddenly thought about and thought, oh, let me have a closer look at it. And I thought, blimey, what a disaster this could have been, Kevin, won't be able to see a new Road Glide CVO unless you order one. That's what I've been told. I know you won't be able to see new. Oh, okay. So yeah, you won't be able to see one unless you order one. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say earlier on. There isn't as if these are kept on the showroom floor, are they? So these are you're going to have to take a leap of faith, especially with this new tech on the engine, the VVT, and the liquid cooling on the heads and everything else that's on the bike. You kind of have to take a leap of faith, especially if you can't see it. You're going to have to go through imagery, through photos and everything like that. It looks good, don't get me wrong. And look, the reports that I've heard say, oh, well, it's amazing. But the problem is you're dealing with people who are very enthusiastic and I'm not saying they're biased, but they're going to have a natural bias towards it, right? So as I keep on saying, I sound like a broken record, I know, but it is the truth of owning one of these bikes, and any bike, is after it's been sold in numbers, right? And people have been owning and riding them for a while, and then you'll find out if it's got any frailties or not, But there we go. But yeah, look, getting back to the CVOs, I don't think they're a game changer. I honestly don't. Decent bikes, yes. Expensive, if you can afford them, great, and all that good stuff. It's nice that they've updated the brakes, the suspension, the infotainment system, and all that kind of stuff. It's all good. The styling looks nice. It doesn't get me wrong. The fairings are good. The LED lighting, thankfully, finally. But I think the VVT in itself isn't a game changer. The 121 is a nice addition. I don't think it necessarily needed to go to a 131 or even bigger. But I think it would have been nice. Don't get me wrong. I think it would have been nice. But I fully understand that it didn't need to go there, and it doesn't need to go there. But this is the problem with the CVOs the last couple of years, that they had the 117 engine, but you could get that engine in all the other bikes as well. So it was why buy a CVO when you've got that, But now you've got a difference. So the CVO, for those who love CVOs, there will be an appetite to buy this 121, I'm sure, with all the changes. But how many will be sold? Who knows? Anyway, that's it. But say if you're interested in those that podcast. Couple of fellas, just seem like a couple of normal guys. What they called Hogs, Cogs, and 2 Aussie Flogs. Yeah, decent. I like that. I like that a lot. Right, there we go. I've plugged another channel. There we go. Anyway, right, so that's it, I think. How long have I been doing this? I've been doing this for, crikey, nearly 2 hours. Blimey, where has the time gone? But listen, all I can say, guys, is it's been emotional. Thanks for watching. Oops. There we go. Thanks for watching, and well, I'll catch you again. But when that next Loon live show will be, I don't know. You don't know. Morris, just a couple of points here. Morris, can you get a longer mudguard extender to protect the oil cooler rectifier, or would that spoil the look too much? I don't think it would spoil the look too much. There are extensions that I've made in the past, just like temporary ones, just for the winter. I may have to do something like that for this winter, or just regular washing. I've already got a grill in front of the oil cooler anyway. The only other option would be to have a fully kind of wrap around a mud guard that go all the way around, and it goes a lot lower. But I personally don't like the look of it on a soft tail, that is. But again, yeah, that would be the logical thing to do, to try and extend it so it doesn't getting there. But one of the problems that I have, and again, this is my own, which I should have acknowledged more myself, is that a lot of the roads that I ride on, especially during the winter, get covered in mud. And get covered in, so there's like one particular stretch of road that I go on. There is a, well, on one side it's a scrapyard, huge scrapyard, and the other side of it, it's a gravel, aggregate, sand type place. So coming out of that place, it's always mud, always sort of mud, and then when it rains, it gets sort of like this very fine, muddy, liquidy type stuff on the ground, and it just sprays up. My bike gets completely covered in it. It's because I ride for about a mile, 2 miles on this road, completely covered on it, and then that's what's clogging up my bike. But there we go, that's it. So it's more attention to detail on my part, really. I think where I'm riding and how it could be affecting my bike. But some people may never have this problem in such a severe case because they're only ever riding on, let's say, dry roads or main roads, not dirty roads, you know, that kind of thing. They don't really ride much in winter, you know, that kind of thing. Right, anyway, all I can say, guys, is thanks for watching, and I'll catch you again in another video coming very soon. There are more videos coming out this week. New live show coming out soon, maybe soon. All right, catch you again. Ta-da.